What's going on, family? This your boy J to the R. Welcome back to the podcast, Making Music with J to the R. And we got another exciting episode for you today. Hopefully, maybe. Let's just see what we got for you. So, I ran across this article online called The 5 Most Important Developments in Hip Hop Production. I came across it on the Isotope website. It was written by Daniel Dixon. So we're going to go over this article, and I want to see what y'all think about it. I'm going to tell you what I think about this particular article talking about what were the 5 most important developments in hip hop production. Because, when it comes to this, it all kind of depends on perspective. We can see, we've watched a lot of documentaries. So I was curious to see if this person named Daniel Dixon, what he actually knew about hip hop, because the name does not imply that he knows very much about hip hop. And to be honest with you, my real name doesn't imply that I know a lot about hip hop. That's why this is called J to the R. But anyway, I digress. So let's dive right into it and let me know what y'all think some kind of way. Either go to the YouTube channel, leave a comment somewhere, which is youtube.com/J to the R. You can go there. On that particular channel, if you listen to this podcast any amount of times, or maybe you found the podcast from the YouTube channel. I do beat tutorials. I do live streams of me making beats. I let y'all listen to some of the completed songs that I've done. We just have a good time over there. I like listening. I like reading the comments that y'all leave, whether good or bad. It's all fun. But anyway, let's dig into the 5 most important developments in hip hop production. So the first thing that he says, number 1 were the New York block parties. Now he goes on to say that documenting hip hop is tricky, and depending on who you talk to and what you read, the origins may differ. That's pretty much what we already know. But one thing is for sure, the block party is organized by DJ Kool Herc in the Bronx, New York City during the 70s. That they were pivotal in the development of both the genre and culture. I agree with this 100%. So there was nothing like the videos or now in the 70s, that was a little bit before my time. So I can't even really comment on that too much. That you just have to depend on the documentaries that you watch or whatever to really see, that's history even for me. So I know a lot of youth today probably has no idea who DJ Kool Herc is, but I do know who he is, obviously. I ain't that young, but I ain't that old to have been around to really understand what was going on back then. So way back then, it was inspired by the dance hall environments and witnessed in the hometown of Kingston, Jamaica. Now, it goes on to say that Kool Herc would extend the break section of a funk and soul song by switching it back and forth between 2 copies of the same record while engaging the dancers using the mic and call and response routine. Or hit the mic. Now, what he means by that is the DJ would have the same record on 2 different record players. Then at that point, he would go back and forth, switching it back and forth, scratching, doing everything he can, getting it hype, getting it crunk, using those two instruments. Because back then, a record player was used as an instrument, not just for playing music. That's what getting crunk and hype was back in the early 70s. So then it says that the collaborative style of DJing developed Kool Herc and later perfected by DJ Grandmaster Flash and MC Curtis Blow. Now we're getting into the age of when I really came up listening to rap. And it says that became the blueprint for hip hop production. Now in 79, a string of records considered hip hop were released, bringing a sample-based sound from New York's African American community to music shops around the world. Yes. Now everybody's heard of Rapper's Delight. If you don't know what Rapper's Delight is, then I don't know what to tell you. You may want to start over, hit reset, and go back to the basics. Rapper's Delight was a song made by the Sugar Hill Gang. It was inspired off a sample riff from Chick's Good Times. It's the most notable release from this time. And in addition to becoming one of the most successful hip-hop songs, and it charted in US, Canada, UK, it also began the still topical debate on authorship and ownership in music. Chick will eventually sue Sugar Hill Records for copyright infringement, of course, because that song was huge. And if they wasn't making no money off of it, they need to make money of it. And, that's true, And the rapper Grandmaster Cash accused the group of stealing his lyrics, which was probably the case. Man, so as you can see, even in the very beginning, it's been drama in hip-hop. Oh, my God. But that type of drama, if it wasn't worked out then, a lot of the issues that they have then, we would still be having today. Now, it goes on to say that although some 1970 hip-hop productions included backing musicians, the turntable was the main instrument, which is pretty much what I said earlier. So that's true. And that was, they used to stitch bits of existing sounds together. And they would use that stuff kind of like, they would make samples. Essentially, that's what he's saying. They would make it samples into songs. Now, that was number one for the 5 most important developments in hip hop. But if you ask me, I guess you got to say that one was number one just because it's the foundation. But to me, this one, number two, probably should be number one because it changed the game. And that is drum machines and MPCs. So in 1980, Roland introduced his drum machine called the TR-808. And when I tell you that particular drum machine, it quickly became the hip hop drum machine. So instead of relying on break beats, producers could now write original drum patterns, speeding up the production process. Break beats. What are break beats? Break beats was when a DJ would take this record and it would have like a drum drop in it. They would use that loop as the drums for that particular song, and they called them break beats. So it's really just a sample of a drum pattern from a song that they would use as the foundation for a rap song. Well, now when they came out with that TR-808, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do that at all. Because and that bad boy had deep 808 bass drum sounds, which was also desired for its solid performance on club PA systems. It used to hit real hard. Syncopated 808 drum beats paired with original and sample synthesizer sequences form the basis for electro hip hop hybrids like Warp's, Nine's, Nunk. So yeah, when that 808 came along, man, it changed the game totally. It was a whole new sound, and I just can't begin. This is around the era when I really started to get into, well, I take that back. A lot of these instruments, when I first started producing, these are the instruments that you had to have, and boy, were they expensive. Now, it goes on to say that hip-hop's love affair with the 808 is still strong today, which it is, because trap music, every trap song has an 808 in it. So most people don't even know what 808 came from. But like I said, it was the TR-808 that Roland came out with many, many moons ago in 1980. And still today, most hip-hop is going to have some type of 808 kick, snare, and hi-hat. That real crisp hi-hat that you hear, that comes from the TR-808. Claps, TR-808. Those high-pitched snares, TR-808. That's what those sounds come from. Now, after the TO-808 came out, EMU, it's spelled EMU. Most of you probably ain't even heard of that. They came out with the SP1200. It was released in 1987 and was one of the first commercially available and affordable digital samplers. Now that EMU that EMU 1200 came out, people lost their minds. Now the one thing about it is, back then those samplers, you didn't have that much sampling time. You only had maybe like 4 seconds to get the job done, and it was a very low sampling rate. I think it was like 26.04 kilohertz, but that pretty much formed the gritty New York hip hop sound between probably like 1985 to 1995. Then 1 year later, Akai, aka introduced the first MPC, which was the MPC 60, and it became hugely popular drum machine among hip hop producers due to its long sampling time. Again, like I said earlier, that SP1200, it only had like 2.5. I think it said 4. But it was really like 2.5 seconds of sampling time. Now most of y'all probably thinking, what am I gonna do with 2.5 seconds of sampling time? Well, I tell you, you can do a lot, because I had a sampler called an ASR 10, and it had, I think it had maybe 12, 13 seconds. This MP60 had 13 seconds. So 13 seconds, going to 13 seconds would be the difference between, how can I put this in today's term? It would probably be the difference between going to a iPhone with 8 gigabytes to an iPhone with 60 to 70 gigabytes. That's the best I can do. But anyway, so that 13 seconds was considered a long sampling time. And that MPC 60 also has a unique sonic character. It had real-time programming capabilities. And DJ Shadow's use of the MPC 60 to produce almost his entire album in 1996, I think it was called Introducing, it elevated the sampling to an art form status and spawned the instrumental hip hop movement. So you can kind of start to see how all of this is starting to come into play. And while sampling had been explored many years earlier, like from people like Pierre Schaeffer and Karl Heinz, and even the Beatles, it hadn't been used to create entire songs at mainstream audiences. So when you start talking about that drum machine, especially the MPC, when the MPC came along, you had that EMU SP1200, you had the TR-808. So if you had in your arsenal that rolling TR-808, which was extremely expensive, if you was trying to buy one in like the 90s, if you can even find it, if you can find one now, goodness gracious, you probably pay about 40 grand for it, just because it's like a piece of art. But anyway, if you had that Roland TR-808 and if you had that SP1200, boy, you was killing it. And the thing about back then too, you had to figure, you didn't really have no whole bunch of MIDI type stuff, so you had to kind of try to figure out how to get that sample in tune with that TR-808, so they both could be in the same tempo. So now he goes on to say in for number 3. Now this is probably, I don't really know how much this plays, but you have to include it. It is the rise of the gangster persona and that particular sound. He goes on to say, by the mid-1980s, hip hop had dropped its funk influences, which is true, and it turned toward a rock for both style and samples. Punk guitarist turned Def Jam producer Rick Rubin drove this change. If you don't know who Rick Rubin is, look him up. He's kind of like an icon for the development of hip hop and Def Jam, which is one of the most popular, influential record labels of its time. I don't even know if it's still around. I'm sure it is, but they ain't putting out shit. Anyway, it goes on to say that his sparse productions blended hard-hitting guitars and turntablism, pushing artists like LL Cool J, Beastie Boys, Run DMC, and Public Enemy into the mainstream success, which is true. And it was funny. If you ever seen Rick Rubin, look him up, Google him. You'll be like, this dude right here was doing that. It's kind of funny. So, Sonics aside, the music made by Rubin during this time was intended for mainstream audiences. So, unlike the lengthy early hip-hop tracks intended for DJs, because the early stuff was intended for parties, DJs did block parties, so you could have a song that was tremendously long because you want people out on the dance floor, and a lot of that stuff was done on the fly. But instead, Rick Rubin, his stuff was between like 3 to 4 minutes, so he could easily get airplay. The politically charged lyrics and aggressive sound design explored in the records above, from LL Cool J, Public Enemy, Beastie Boys, Run DMC, they laid the foundation for what was called gangsta rap. Perhaps probably best summed up by NWA's album Straight Outta Compton. Now, before NWA, you had, there was always been pretty much gangster rap, but when NWA came, because if you look back at some of the, I digress a little bit, but if you look back at like EPMD, Eric B. and Rakim, that battle rapping, it was, a lot of this stuff was like battle rap type stuff, but it was a lot of this stuff was gangster too. But when NWA came along, they took it up a notch and a half. Oh my God! So most of NWA's production was handled by Dr. Dre. I'm sure most of everybody already know that. We don't even have to go through that, and because Dr. Dre changed the game when it came to production. 1990s hip hop was dominated by the feud between artists from the East Coast and West Coast. We know that, which was Death Row and Bad Boy. The whole feud between Tupac and Biggie. That's when the East Coast, West Coast, man. I'm from the South, so that was the good part. I was from the South. I didn't have to pick a side. I listened to both. If you living on the West, you don't want to get caught playing no East Coast music. You living on the East, you don't want to get caught playing no West Coast music. But in the South, we listen to it all. Didn't nobody care about that shit, and still don't to this day. We just like good music. Now, number 4 is what he called in this article the Daisy Age. Yeah. This was an interesting point that he made, because I've never heard of the Daisy Age. And basically what he's referring to by that is it's a catch-all for chill out 1990s hip-hop that was either criticized or ignored gangster rap. And it was pioneered by New York-based groups like Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul. I never heard of Daisy Age, but I've never referred to Tribe Called Quest or De La Soul as a Daisy Age group, but whatever, player. And the reason why he called it that was their music was characterized by eclectic sampling, experimental sound design, a wide range of lyrical topics, including spirituality, activism, and technology. So because they had open mind, they was considered daisies. Ain't that some bullshit? I consider that the real, you know what I'm saying? Because life is more than just gangster. It was more than just partying. It's about all of these things. So you got to use all of it. And, it's about your full self. But whatever. On a Tribe Called Quest sophomore album, Low End Theory, which was released in 92, producer Q-Tip was praised for his high quality production. He used laid back bebop samples. So today we consider that And even back then, we considered that as East Coast. So to our ears, it was pretty much the same. That was kind of like the foundation of a hip hop, East Coast boom bap type sound. And he goes on to say, while it was lighthearted and a quirky style of hip hop only remained popular for a few years, it would set the foundation for the transition from gangster rap to the introspective, stylistic, broad music of Kanye West and his peers during the early and mid 2000s. I mean, I could see that relationship there. More people was trying to. This is when you start getting the Midwest, the Chicago rappers coming out with just music, almost to the point to where it was. If you ask me, it was in this transition is where it was going to turn to more towards like pop. You know what I'm saying? He says that the expanding taste of music consumers due to internet music sharing, it made easier for hip hop artists to find success, exploring new directions and narratives. Kanye's winning of 2007 album sales competition with 50 Cent is representative of this. Hip hop came to accept influences as far-ranging as indie, gospel, electronic, and classical, new tempos and atmospheres to the genre. It's not to the point that we came to accept it. The music came along and we liked it. It's not a point of accepting. You know what I'm saying? It came along, we liked it. When NW came along, that was different. We liked it. It's not accepting nothing. I don't really understand that. Then he starts to bring in talking about the popularity of Erykah Badu and Lauryn Hill, and how they had that smooth neo soul, which was a descendant of R&B with a strong female presence. That was an alternative for male artists uninterested in the hedonism of hip hop to explore a more vulnerable theme like heartbreak. I consider those two. I don't know if I really consider Erykah Badu. Lauryn Hill definitely hip hop. I mean, that's she's not neo soul. I guess you could consider Lauryn Hill neo soul, because I can get with that. So the next point that he made was Atlanta's emergence of hip hop hub as a hip hop hub. Atlanta's emergence as a hip hop hub. Yeah, that did definitely play an important part of it. Because while most of the attention given to hip hop from the 70s and 90s was focused on New York, by the 90s, mid-90s, Atlanta was emerging as a powerful new industry player. Probably from 94 to 2004, you had Outkast, which was like their influences was like all over the place, and everybody just, again, it wasn't about accepting them, it was about something different and something that people actually enjoyed, because they experimented with like unconventional sounds. They used historically Southern style instruments like a harmonica, that harmonica sound that they used on Rosa Parks. I mean, that shit was phenomenal. So while Outkast earned its success and praise among critics, it was the trap movement that really put Atlanta on the map. Beginning in like 2001, you had Young Jeezy, Gucci Mane, T.I. They presented a dramatic synthesized form of hip hop built around the 808 drum, sub 808 bass, and crazy percussion fills. Again, we go back to that TR-808. So way back from the 70s or the 80s rather, people today in 2001 and even today are still using them 808 sounds. So all you dudes producing trap beats that be downloading them 808 kits and just think 808 is that's a 808 kick and just stop right there as far as the thought. That sound has been around for years. So what you're using ain't nothing new. It's been around for years, Playboy. So some consider trap as a revival of West Coast gangster rap, given its occupation with Atlanta's crime and drug trade. Naturally, the genre received heavily scrutiny from the media, because here's how it works. You get this genre, which is just like the gangster rap. So now this is about crack. It's about selling drugs, because that's what they did. That's what they're talking about. West Coast was about gangster stuff. You know what I'm saying? It was about repping your street. Trap music was about cooking that white. You know what I'm saying? So, and it was insanely popular, and it was taking over the suburbs as well as the hoods. When you start getting in the suburbs, that's when problems start happening. So perhaps more interesting than the music itself was the way it was marketed. Trap artists took full advantage of the internet to distribute their music, often releasing multiple albums independently for free within short periods of time, driving a lot of interest and sometimes confusion. With this, the barriers to enter the music industry was lowered, and it was a change that made it possible for all manner of music artists to quickly achieve and also lose fame. Now, you can't talk about Atlanta without talking about Lex Luger, who just stopped. You know, he was a powerhouse. Will Made It, Metro Boomin, all of them changed the game with how they did beats. It's just as simple as that. All of these trap stuff, if you didn't have these three artists, especially Lex Luger, most of y'all probably don't even know who Lex Luger is, and that wasn't even that long ago. There's a whole story behind why he quit. One person they didn't mention is Southside, which is a part who is and still do beats. But Lex Luger, come on, killed the game for trap beats. Listen to some of that old Future stuff. Oh, anything. It was crazy. So those are kind of like the top 5 most important developments in the evolution of hip hop. Most of them I agree with. Some of the information he used to prove his point in the article, you know, was kind of questionable, but all in all, I think it was a pretty good article on talking about some of the 5 important things. But having said that, if it was me, I would also include the Houston South Side type of rapping. Talk, you know, the Power Wall. They said nothing about, which I think also is an important aspect of the evolution, is like the I don't even remember what you call this shit, like the Luke Skywalker, that he sparked a whole new style of beats in itself. And if you ask me, like Luther Campbell, aka Luke Skywalker, Get Live Crew, or Two Live Crew, I can't remember the name of the group. To me, that changed the game, and that kind of paved the way to the whole Atlanta type rapping and beat making. So, you kind of gotta include them into the picture as well, because when you gotta include them and almost anybody like from the South that had their own way of doing stuff, such as the Houston rappers, the whole all of them record labels down there in the South. They changed the game, and those influences are still going on today. Like I said, you had Paul Wall, you had Mike Jones. You can go all the way back to the Ghetto Boys. All of that was around that same time and kind of changed the game. But anyway, I think I bored y'all long enough, so I'm gonna holler at you. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Go check out my YouTube channel, J to the R. You just do that search if you can't find it. Or if you don't even want to look at YouTube to go there, go to my website. You can find my podcast there, and you can find most of my YouTube videos, and that is jtotheR.com. This your boy. Thank you for listening to Making Music with J to the R. Peace.